Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. It was 2:04 a.m. when my phone lit up on the nightstand. A message from her, Emily. The glow from the screen cut through the dark room. I need space, it said. Then another. You're too possessive. I read it twice, then once more, not because I didn't understand it, but because of how cold it felt. Like it had been rehearsed. Like it wasn't meant for me, but for the version of me she'd built in her head. I stared at the message for a few seconds, then typed back slowly. Then stop using my bed as yours. Sent. 10 minutes later, 12 missed calls. The silence between each ring was heavier than the sound itself. I didn't answer. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, realizing that sometimes peace doesn't come from fixing things. It comes from walking away without noise. When morning came, sunlight spilled through the blinds, and her side of the bed was empty. It wasn't a surprise. She'd been halfway gone for months, emotionally, physically, all of it. The late nights with friends, the new clothes she said were for work, the phone always face down when I walked into the room. At breakfast, I made coffee in my old mug from Target, the one she used to steal. I scrolled through my phone, 5 new messages from her, all versions of the same apology. I didn't mean it like that. You're taking it too seriously. We just need space to breathe. But the truth was, I'd already been suffocating for months, breathing through her half-truths and half-efforts. Around noon, Ryan, my best friend, called. He asked if everything was okay. I told him, yeah, just got clarity at 2 a.m. He didn't ask for details. He'd seen enough of our slow collapse over the past year. That night, she showed up at the apartment. Hair messy, eyes red, pretending she just wanted to talk. I opened the door, but didn't move aside. She asked if she could come in. I said, you said you needed space, so take it. She froze for a second, then left. No tears, no shouting. Just a look that said she'd finally realized something she never expected. I wasn't chasing anymore. I watched her car disappear down the street, then went back inside, poured another cup of coffee, and turned off my phone. For the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The next morning felt different. Quieter. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just hollow. Her side of the bed still smelled like her perfume. The faint scent of something expensive and familiar, now out of place. I stared at the empty space beside me and realized how much effort it takes to hold on to something that's already gone. Her words from the night before echoed in my head. You're too possessive. The irony hit me. I never once told her who to see, where to go, or what to post. I just asked for honesty. But honesty is heavy for someone who's built their life on pretending. Around noon, I went to the gym, trying to burn through the restlessness. I ran until my chest burned, until my thoughts blurred into silence. When I checked my phone afterward, there were 6 new messages from her. The last one said, I didn't mean space like this. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove to the diner near our old street, the one where we used to go after late-night movies. The same waitress still worked there, the one who used to tease us about always sitting in the same booth. She looked at me and asked, You alone today? I nodded. Guess so. I ordered black coffee and sat there, watching the world move around me. Outside, a couple argued by their car, the woman shouting, the man silent. I wondered if that's how we looked to others, her talking over me trying not to break. By evening, I went back home. The apartment was too clean, too still. I opened the fridge and saw the leftovers she'd made 2 nights before. I threw them out, one container at a time. It wasn't about anger. It was about reclaiming space. At 10 p.m., she called again. I let it ring. Then another call. Then another. When it stopped, a message appeared. I just want to talk. I stood there, staring at the screen, and something inside me finally clicked. She didn't want space. She wanted control. And I'd just taken it back. I set the phone face down on the table, poured myself a drink, and turned on some quiet music. For once, I wasn't waiting for her to come home. And for the first time since all of this began, I realized something simple. Silence isn't the end of love. It's the end of manipulation disguised as it. By the 3rd day, her silence had turned into noise. Notifications flooded my phone. Texts, missed calls, even voice messages. I didn't open any of them. I knew the pattern too well. First anger, then guilt, then desperation. It was her cycle of control, always dressed as emotion. I left the phone on the counter and drove out of town. The sky was gray, the kind of color that feels like a pause between storms. I didn't plan where to go. I just drove until the city noise disappeared behind me. Eventually, I stopped at a gas station off the highway. The clerk handed me a coffee in a paper cup, nodded like he'd seen 1,000 men doing the same thing, driving to escape something they couldn't name. I parked near the edge of the lot, sipped the coffee, and thought about the last few months. The way she'd say, "I love you," but never look up from her phone. The late nights she claimed were girls' dinners. The sudden distance in her eyes when I asked how her day was. I wasn't possessive, I was just awake. And she hated that. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were 32 missed calls, 12 of them back to back. I opened one message. It was short. "Please don't do this. We can fix it." Fix it. That phrase used to make me hesitate. Now it just sounded like maintenance for something already rusted through. I drove to a cheap motel near the coast, the kind with flickering neon lights and the faint smell of salt in the air. I checked in under my first name only. When I closed the door behind me, it felt like shutting the past out for good. I turned off my phone again, tossed it on the nightstand, and sat by the window. Outside, a storm was rolling in. Waves crashed against the shore, the wind howling like something alive. I didn't feel lost. I felt found, by silence, by distance, by truth. I knew she'd keep calling. I knew she'd twist the story to anyone who'd listen. But I also knew this. Once a woman who lives off attention meets a man who lives in peace, she can't survive the quiet. And that's exactly where I was now, in the quiet. Watching the storm, calm in the middle of it, finally realizing I didn't need to be loved to feel whole. I just needed to stop being controlled. The storm lasted all night. By morning, the world outside my motel window looked cleaner, sharper. The air smelled like salt and wet asphalt. I stood there for a while, coffee in hand, watching the waves settle. My phone was still off. I hadn't looked at it since I left home. That silence, no buzzing, no flashing screen, felt like therapy. When I finally turned it on, I didn't check messages right away. Instead, I watched the notifications pile up. Calls, texts, voicemails. Then one photo, sent by Ryan. "You should see this," he'd written. I opened it. It was a picture of her at a rooftop bar, sitting too close to some guy I didn't recognize. Her hand was on his arm, eyes locked on him like I'd never existed. The timestamp was from the same night she'd texted me. "I need space." I laughed, not out of anger, but because of how predictable it all was. She'd already been planning her next act before the first one ended. That message wasn't about needing space. It was about clearing her conscience. She wanted to feel innocent while doing exactly what she accused me of being, too attached. Ryan called right after. I picked up this time. He sounded uneasy, said people were already talking, that she was telling everyone I lost it, that I'd gone cold. He said she looked tired, like she'd been crying in public. I told him not to defend me. "Let her talk," I said. Her version of the story always burns out on its own. I drove into town later, stopped by a small diner off the highway. Ordered pancakes, black coffee. The waitress poured me refills without asking, the sound of the coffee hitting the cup somehow grounding. Around me, life went on, families talking, kids laughing, the smell of bacon in the air. It felt so distant from the chaos, she was probably spinning back home. That night, I went back to the motel, packed my things, and checked out. Before leaving, I looked at the bed, the empty table, the window streaked with rain. I thought about her message again. "I need space." She got it. But the difference was, I'd filled mine with peace. Hers was filled with regret. As I walked to my car, the sun was setting, the sky burning orange. I unlocked the door, tossed my bag inside, and smiled to myself. Some storms don't destroy. They just wash away what never belonged in your life to begin with. I drove south for hours that day, no destination in mind. The road stretched open under the afternoon sun, and for the first time in years, my thoughts weren't racing to catch up with someone else's lies. I stopped at a small roadside diner somewhere near Jacksonville, ordered black coffee and a slice of pie, and watched the world move around me. People laughing, servers rushing, the smell of bacon and burnt toast hanging in the air. Real life. Unfiltered. Something she never understood. When I checked my phone again, there was one voicemail waiting. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. It was her. The The first few seconds were silent, then a shaky breath. She said she'd made a mistake, that she'd been confused, that she never meant for things to go this far. Her voice cracked halfway through. Then she said something I didn't expect. You were never possessive. You were just the only one who saw me clearly. I replayed that line twice, then deleted the message. I didn't need it saved. Some truths only matter once you stop chasing them. That night, I checked into another small motel near the water. I stood outside, watching the reflection of the neon sign ripple across the puddles in the parking lot. It reminded me of her reflection in every mirror she'd ever stood in front of, always perfect, always rehearsed. Except this time, she was losing her audience. Ryan texted again. He said she'd been trying to reach me through him. She'd stopped posting photos with that guy, stopped showing up at her usual places. She's falling apart, man, he said. I told him not to worry. I wasn't coming back to fix what she broke. I walked down to the beach that night, waves crashing in slow rhythm. The air was cold, sharp, but clean. I sat in the sand and thought about the word space. How she'd used it as an escape. And how now, it was the thing suffocating her. By midnight, I turned my phone off again. The world went dark, quiet. I didn't miss her voice anymore. I didn't miss her presence, her chaos, or her constant need to prove something. All I missed was the version of myself I used to be before her, steady, focused, unbothered. And somewhere between the sound of the ocean and the silence in my chest, I realized I'd finally found him again. A week passed before I heard from her again. By then, the days had taken on their own rhythm. Mornings with coffee, afternoons walking along the shore, nights filled with nothing but silence and the sound of the tide pulling itself apart. I'd stopped checking my phone as often. The stillness was no longer strange, it was comfortable. Then one evening, just as the sun was bleeding into the ocean, my phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. She's looking for you. Says she's ready to talk face to face. I didn't reply. I stared at the message for a while, then turned off the screen. I didn't know her my presence anymore. Silence was the only language left between us, and I'd learned how to speak it fluently. But that night, curiosity won again. I opened my laptop and checked social media for the first time in weeks. Her account was different. No selfies, no quotes about self-love, no pictures of nights out. Just a blank profile picture and one post. Sometimes you lose people not because they stop loving you, but because they finally start loving themselves. I knew that line wasn't hers. She'd probably copied it from somewhere, but still, it said enough. I shut the laptop and went for a drive. The road was empty, the hum of the tires on asphalt the only sound in the world. I ended up at a small bar near the docks, the kind of place where no one asks questions. I sat at the counter, ordered a beer, and watched a couple argue quietly in the corner. The man looked tired, his eyes saying everything his mouth wouldn't. I knew that looked too well. When I got back to the motel, there was a message waiting. Her again. Just 3 words. Please come home. For a long moment, I didn't move. I stared at those words, feeling their weight. They didn't sting. They didn't soften. They just landed. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for stability. The same stability she'd taken for granted when she had it. I didn't reply. I deleted the message, poured a drink, and stepped outside. The air was cold, the moon sharp against the black sky. Somewhere back home, she was realizing that space wasn't freedom. It was isolation. And maybe, for the first time, she was starting to understand what I'd learned the hard way. Sometimes, silence isn't the absence of love. It's the presence of self-respect. 2 more weeks went by. No messages, no calls, nothing. I thought maybe she'd finally let go. But then, late one night, I heard a knock on my motel door. Soft at first, then firmer. I knew it was her before I even looked. The kind of knowing that lives deep in your bones. I opened the door. There she was, Emily. Hair pulled back, eyes tired, makeup smeared like she'd been crying but ran out of tears halfway through. She looked smaller somehow, like the distance had stripped away the version of herself she used to perform for the world. She said she just wanted to talk. Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't invite her in. I just leaned against the doorframe and waited. She said she'd been living with a friend, trying to figure things out. That she hadn't been sleeping, hadn't been herself. She said she missed the calm we used to have. I let her speak. I didn't interrupt, didn't comfort. She kept talking, like silence scared her. Every few sentences, She'd stop and look at me like she was waiting for something, a reaction, a spark, a chance. But there was nothing left to give. Finally, she asked if we could start over. Said she'd changed, that she understood now what space had cost her. I looked at her and saw it. The moment she realized she was talking to a different man, one who no longer lived on the leash of her apologies. I told her I didn't hate her, that I never did. But hate and love aren't opposites. Comfort and clarity are. And I'd finally found clarity. She nodded slowly, tears starting again, but quieter this time. She said she deserved this silence. I didn't argue. She was right. When she turned to leave, she stopped halfway, like she wanted to say something else but couldn't find the words. Then she whispered, "You really meant it, didn't you? When you said stop using your bed as mine." I didn't answer. I just closed the door gently behind her. I stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of her footsteps fade into the night. That's when I understood something simple and sharp. Some people never realize they're replaceable until they're standing outside of peace they used to belong to. And once you outgrow chaos, you never open the door for it again. After she left that night, the quiet felt heavier than usual. Not sad, just dense, like the air after a storm. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in the dark, letting the silence settle in. For the first time, I realized she wasn't the villain of my story. She was just lost, and I'd stopped volunteering to guide her out. The next morning, I drove down to the pier. The sun was rising, pink and gold over the water, fishermen already setting up for the day. I ordered a black coffee from the small stand near the docks and watched the world wake up. My phone was in my pocket, but I didn't check it. I didn't need to. By mid-morning, I finally looked. One message from her. It said, "Thank you for not yelling." That was it. No apologies, no pleading. Just a strange acknowledgement that I'd done what she couldn't. Stay calm while everything burned. I didn't reply. I spent the rest of the day walking through the town, small shops and quiet streets, people greeting each other like they'd known everyone forever. I bought a plain t-shirt from a store that sold fishing gear and thought about how simple life felt without the noise of her chaos. It wasn't lonely. It was clean. That evening, I got a call from Ryan. He said she'd gone back home, to the same apartment I'd left. She'd packed away everything, even took down the photos of us from the walls. He said she was quieter now, different. I told him I wasn't surprised. Losing someone steady changes you. After the call, I sat on the porch and watched the tide come in. The sky was bruised with clouds, a storm somewhere far offshore. I thought about how she used to text me every time it rained, saying she couldn't sleep without me next to her. Now, she'd have to learn how. I wasn't angry. I wasn't satisfied either. Just aware. Some people love you as long as you're within reach. But when you step back, when they face the version of themselves without your stability, they see what they've lost. That night, I left my phone on the counter, screen down. I didn't need to check for her messages anymore. I already knew what they'd say. Because deep down, she'd learned the same truth I had. Space isn't freedom when you finally understand what peace costs. A few days later, Ryan called again. His tone was hesitant, careful, like he didn't know if he should say what he was about to say. He told me she'd been keeping to herself lately. No more parties, no more pictures, no late-night posts. Just work, sleep, repeat. Apparently, her friends had started drifting away. The same people who used to fill her life with constant noise. She'd finally run out of distractions. I didn't say much, just listened. He asked if I planned on talking to her again. I told him I wasn't planning anything. That was the truth. The man she knew used to plan every word, every move, hoping to fix what couldn't be fixed. That man was gone. That evening, I went for a drive along the coast. The sky was soft with the last light of the day, waves rolling in lazy rhythm. I stopped at a gas station, grabbed a drink, and sat on the tailgate of my car, watching the ocean stretch endlessly. It hit me then. Distance doesn't always mean miles. Sometimes, it's the space between who you used to be and who you refuse to become again. When I got back to the motel, I found a small package waiting at the front desk. No return address, just my name written in her handwriting. I opened it in my room. Inside was a photo frame. Us, from years ago. The picture had a note taped to the back. I finally understand. Thank you for teaching me what love isn't. I held it for a moment, then set it face down on the table. There was no sadness, no anger, just clarity. She wasn't asking for another chance. She was surrendering to the lesson. That night, I sat outside under the fading moonlight, the ocean sound rolling like a heartbeat in the distance. I thought about how everything had come full circle. The woman who once said she needed space had finally found it. And the man she accused of being possessive had become untouchable, not because he stopped caring, but because he started caring differently. Sometimes, peace looks like walking away. Other times, it looks like staying gone long enough for someone else to find the truth you learned too late. I finished my drink, leaned back in the chair, and let the silence stretch out again. It wasn't empty anymore. It was mine. I left the photo face down on the table and never turned it over again. Some memories don't deserve to face the light. They've already done their job. That night, I walked down to the beach, the sand cold under my feet, the wind cutting across the water. The tide was pulling hard, steady, and endless. It felt familiar, like time itself was reminding me that moving on isn't a single choice. It's a rhythm you grow into. The next morning, I packed what little I had and checked out of the motel. The woman behind the counter smiled, asked if I'd be coming back. I told her no. I think I'm finally headed home. She nodded, as if she understood without needing to ask why. The drive north felt different this time. Not heavy, just quiet. Somewhere along the highway, I stopped at a diner for coffee. I sat in the same corner booth I used to sit in with Emily months before. The same booth where she'd laugh like nothing could ever touch her. The waitress recognized me. She didn't say much, just poured my coffee and said, "You look lighter." Maybe I did, because I wasn't carrying her anymore. Or the version of myself that thought love meant convincing someone to stay. When I finally got back to the city, I didn't go to our old apartment. I drove past it slowly. The curtains were closed, lights off. It didn't feel like home anymore. I kept going until I reached the small house I'd rented near the edge of town. A new space. A clean start. That night, as I unpacked, I found my phone vibrating on the counter. A message. Her name. I didn't open it right away. I just stared at the notification for a long time. Finally, I swiped it open. It said, "I hope you found peace." Because I finally did too. For a moment, I let the words hang in the air. Then I typed back, "Peace isn't found. It's built." I hit send and put the phone face down again. Not out of anger, not out of pride, just out of understanding. We were done speaking the same language. Outside, the night was calm. The city lights shimmered faintly against the dark sky. I stood by the window, breathing in the stillness. Once upon a time, she'd said she needed space. Now we both had it. The difference was, I filled mine with peace. Hers was the echo of what she'd lost. And that's when I finally knew I wasn't her lesson anymore. I was her consequence. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.